The final battle for Krextal began not with weapons, but with terror. Captain Bo Young-oh's psychological warfare reached its peak as the human fleet approached the fortress world. She broadcast continuous transmissions showing Earth's most extreme environments, humans walking casually through radioactive zones, diving into ocean depths that would crush most aliens, and working normally in temperature extremes that ranged from Arctic cold to volcanic heat. "This is what normal looks like to us." Admiral Lee's voice accompanied the footage. "Your worst nightmare is our Tuesday afternoon." The effect on Krex morale was devastating. Intercepted communications showed panic spreading through their home fleet as commanders tried to understand how to fight enemies who treated the impossible as routine. War leader Vextar, now commanding the defense from the planet's surface, screamed orders at his subordinates. "They are just flesh and blood. They can be killed like any other species. Concentrate all fire on their flagship." But the human fleet had already begun employing tactics that would become legendary in galactic military history. Instead of attacking the heavily defended approach routes, 15 human ships scattered across the entire star system. They used every asteroid, every piece of debris, every gravitational anomaly as cover, turning the Krextal system into the largest guerrilla warfare zone the galaxy had ever seen. Colonel Hyunwoo Kang led the ground assault teams in a maneuver that violated every principle of military science. Instead of waiting for orbital bombardment to clear landing zones, his troops launched directly toward the planet's surface while the space battle raged overhead. "Remember your training," he called to his soldiers as their drop pods screamed through the atmosphere. The Krex built their cities like fortresses because that's how they think. Big walls, obvious defenses, predictable patterns. The drop pods landed not in the open areas where defenders expected them, but in the middle of Krex urban centers, where the aliens' own defensive systems couldn't fire without destroying their own infrastructure. Human soldiers poured out of their pods and immediately disappeared into the city's underground systems, sewers, maintenance tunnels, subway networks, all the hidden spaces that civilized species ignored but humans had learned to exploit on Earth. Major Dong-hyun Lee led his squad through the capital city's storm drain system, moving beneath the feet of confused Krex defenders who couldn't understand where their enemies had gone. "Surface forces report human troops have vanished," he heard through intercepted communications. "Scanning shows no life signs in the landing zones." That was because humans had learned to hide from orbital sensors on a planet where being detected often meant death. Thermal camouflage, electromagnetic shielding, and movement patterns that confused automated tracking systems. All skills developed by species that had survived everything Earth could throw at them. Above the planet, the space battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Sumin Han, now commanding an entire wing of Fury Squadron fighters, demonstrated why human pilots were becoming the stuff of alien nightmares. Her ships appeared inside the Krex defensive formations, fired devastating salvos at point-blank range, and vanished before return fire could target them. "This is impossible," Krex fleet commanders radioed to each other. "They're jumping through hyperspace during active combat. That should tear their ships apart." What they didn't understand was that humans had learned to take impossible risks, because Earth had taught them that safe choices often led to death anyway. Better to try something crazy and succeed than play it safe and fail. Commander Insu Park's naval forces showed the Krex what human space warfare really looked like when all restrictions were removed. His ships used kinetic weapons that punched through energy shields like they weren't there, fired chemical explosives that filled space with unpredictable debris clouds, and employed electronic warfare systems that turned the aliens' own computers against them. But the most terrifying human weapon was their absolute refusal to give up. Krex warships were designed for clean, honorable combat between civilized species. When damaged, they would withdraw to repair facilities and return to fight another day. Human ships kept fighting even when their hulls were breached, their life support was failing, and their weapons were running out of ammunition. The crew of the frigate Daigu's Pride became legendary when their ship lost main power during combat with 3 Krex heavy cruisers. Instead of surrendering or retreating, they used backup power to ram the largest enemy vessel, then continued fighting with handheld weapons while their ship was embedded in the alien hull. How do we defeat enemies who don't know how to quit? A Krex commander asked desperately during a broadcast that human intelligence intercepted. The answer came from Admiral Lee herself, speaking on all frequencies so every alien in the system could hear. You don't. That's the point. The siege of Krexdal's capital reached its climax when Sumin Han attempted the most dangerous maneuver in military history. Flying her fighter through a storm of defensive fire that should have destroyed a dozen ships, she used microjumps to appear inside the planetary shield generator facility. Her mission was to disable the shields protecting the capital city. But what she found there changed the entire nature of the war. The facility wasn't just a shield generator. It was also a command center coordinating the genocide of 17 different species across the Krex Empire. Computer screens showed orbital bombardments in progress against defenseless worlds with casualty counts running into the billions. Admiral, Sumin's voice was tight with controlled fury. You need to see this. The Villani weren't the only ones. They're wiping out entire civilizations right now. Admiral Lee saw the data and felt the cold rage that came from discovering evil beyond imagination. The Krex weren't just conquerors. They were exterminators, systematically destroying any species that couldn't fight back. All human forces, she announced. The mission parameters have changed. We're not just here to protect the Villani. We're here to stop a galactic holocaust. The final assault on the Krex capital was swift and merciless. Human forces emerged from every hiding place at once, appearing in locations the defenders thought were impossible to reach. They had learned the city's layout during hours of underground reconnaissance, identified every weak point, and planned coordinated strikes that would cripple the alien command structure in minutes. War leader Vexitar made his last desperate gambit from the planet's central command bunker. He activated the self-destruct sequence for Krexdal's planetary core, intending to take the human fleet with him in a final act of spite. If we cannot rule the galaxy, he broadcast to the human ships, then no one will. In 30 minutes, this world will explode with the force of a small star. Admiral Lee's response became one of the most quoted statements in galactic history. You still don't understand what you're dealing with. We're not just from a Deathworld, Vextar. We're the ones who made our world kneel to us. The race to stop the planetary destruction saw human engineering skills pushed to their absolute limits. Teams led by Captain Jahyun Shin fought their way through collapsing tunnels and failing life support systems to reach the core control chambers. They found the Krex had built a system that was supposedly impossible to shut down once activated, a final safeguard against exactly this kind of situation. But they had made a critical error. They had designed it to be tamper-proof against species that followed rules. Humans didn't follow rules. They followed results. Using techniques that would have horrified alien engineers, the human teams bypassed every safety protocol, rerouted power through systems that were never meant to carry such loads, and shut down the planetary core with 17 seconds to spare. As the lights came back on across Krexdal and the self-destruct sequence ended, war leader Vextar realized his empire was finished. The humans had done the impossible again, and now they controlled his homeworld. The surrender came not from Vextar, but from the surviving Krex fleet commanders who could no longer watch their species face extinction. In a ceremony broadcast across the galaxy, the Krex Empire officially submitted to human authority. But Admiral Lee surprised everyone with her response to victory. We didn't come here to conquer, she announced to the assembled alien representatives. We came here to stop genocide. The Krex Empire is dissolved, but the Krex people will be given a chance to learn better ways. The aftermath of the war saw the liberation of 17 species that had been facing extinction. The Villani, grateful beyond words, offered to share their most advanced medical and crystal technologies with their human saviors. Dr. Yuna Kim's final report became required reading in diplomatic schools across the galaxy. Humanity has become the galaxy's protectors not because we're the strongest, but because we're the only ones who grew up on a world that taught us that strength means protecting those who can't protect themselves. The Deathworld fleet became a symbol of hope for peaceful species throughout the galaxy. Recruitment centers on Earth couldn't keep up with volunteers wanting to serve among the stars, carrying the message that bullies would no longer be tolerated. And, in the deepest archives of galactic civilization, scholars made a note that would influence interstellar relations for generations to come. Never threaten the humans. The chase lasted 6 days across 3 star systems. The remaining Krex ships fled toward their fortress world of Krexdal, leaving a trail of debris and abandoned outposts behind them. War leader Vextar had never experienced retreat before, and the taste of defeat filled him with rage and confusion. Intelligence officer Yansu Park worked around the clock in the communication center of the Soul's Vengeance, intercepting every Krex transmission she could find. What she discovered painted a picture of an empire in panic. "Admiral, you need to hear this," she called out during the morning briefing. Admiral So-Jin Lee listened to the translated messages, her expression growing darker with each word. The Krex were calling for reinforcements from across their empire, but more importantly, they were trying to understand what they had encountered. "The Deathworld species fights without honor," one message said. "They use the environment as a weapon. They attack from impossible angles. They show no mercy to defeated enemies." Another transmission was even more revealing. "Request immediate tactical analysis. How do we fight an enemy that has no predictable patterns? Their ships appear from nowhere. Their soldiers fight in zero gravity like they were born in space. They use primitive chemical weapons that our shields cannot stop." But it was the final message that made Admiral Lee smile coldly. "All ships retreat to Krexdal Fortress System. The humans cannot break our defenses there. We will force them to attack our strongest position and destroy them with overwhelming numbers." Dr. Yuna Kim looked up from her translation console. "They're setting a trap. The fortress world has been their stronghold for 500 years. Natural barriers, orbital weapons platforms, and the home fleet stationed there." "How many ships?" asked General Tae-Young Choi. "At least 300 according to our intelligence," replied Commander Wu Jin Nam. "Plus planetary defenses that could stop a full galactic fleet." Admiral Lee stood quietly for a moment, studying the star chart showing the route to Krexdal. Her officers waited for her decision, knowing it would determine the fate of humanity's first galactic war. "We're going after them," she announced. Finally, Captain Daeho Park looked concerned. "Admiral, 15 ships against their entire home fleet and planetary defenses. Even with our advantages, those odds are exactly the kind Earth prepared us for," Lee finished. "The Krex think like generals planning a campaign. We think like survivors facing impossible odds. There's a difference." The human fleet began the journey to Krexdal, but Admiral Lee had no intention of fighting the battle the aliens expected. While they traveled, she implemented a strategy that would have been impossible for any other species in the galaxy. Captain Jahyun Shin led the engineering teams in adapting captured Krex technology. Human engineers had a reputation for being able to fix anything with spare parts and determination, but they also had a talent for making enemy weapons work better than their original designers intended. "Look at this plasma cannon," Shin explained to his team as they worked on a captured Krex frigate. "Beautiful design, very efficient, but they built it to fire in clean, predictable patterns." He pointed to the weapons control systems. "We're going to change that. Instead of one steady beam, we'll make it fire in random bursts. Instead of aiming where the computer says to aim, we'll add chaos variables that make the shots impossible to predict." Within days, the captured Krex ships were armed with weapons that would confuse and terrify their former owners. Clean energy beams became wild, unpredictable fire patterns, targeting systems that once locked onto enemies with mathematical precision now sprayed destruction across areas too large to defend. But the real breakthrough came from Dr. Hai-Jin Ko's biological research team. "I've been studying the Krex prisoners we captured," she reported to Admiral Lee. "Their psychology is even more limited than we thought. They literally cannot think outside established patterns." She showed brain scans of human and Krex neural activity. "Look at these differences. When a human faces an unexpected problem, our brains light up like Christmas trees. We start thinking of solutions from every possible angle. But Krex brains shut down non-essential thought processes and focus on established responses." "What does that mean for combat?" asked the Admiral. "It means they can only react to threats they've seen before. Show them something completely new, and their military training actually works against them. They'll keep trying solutions that don't work because those are the only solutions they know." Meanwhile, Dr. Yuna Kim had made her own discovery while monitoring Krek's communications. "They're terrified of us," she announced during the daily briefing, not just as enemies but as a concept. She played translated intercepts from across the Krek's empire. Commanders who had never seen humans described them as the Chaos Bringers and the Impossible Ones. Stories of the battle at the Villani system had grown in the telling until humans sounded like demons from Krek's mythology. They're calling Earth the Angry Planet and claiming it's inhabited by spirits of destruction, Yuna continued. Some Krek's commanders are refusing to fight us because they believe we're not really alive, just manifestations of planetary vengeance. Admiral Lee realized that fear could be a weapon more powerful than any gun. "Send a message to their home fleet. Tell them we're coming." The message that reached Krexdal was simple and terrifying. "This is Admiral Sojin Lee of the Human Defense Fleet. You attacked innocents under our protection. You broke your word during honorable combat. You threatened our homeworld. We are coming to end this war. Surrender now, or learn what the Angry Planet taught us about dealing with bullies." The Krek's response was exactly what Lee expected. Defiant rejection and threats of total destruction, but she had listened to enough intercepted communications to know the truth. The Krek's empire was more frightened than they had ever been in their 1,000-year history. As the human fleet approached the Krek's home system, they began encountering the outer defensive lines. Automated weapon platforms, sensor networks, and patrol fleets that should have stopped any invasion force. But the humans didn't attack these defenses directly. Instead, they did something the Kreks had never seen before. They went around them. Sumin Han's Fury Squadron used micro-jumps through hyperspace to appear behind enemy positions, disable them with precisely placed explosives, and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. Captain Sunghwan Kim's stealth ship slipped through gaps in the sensor network that the Kreks didn't even know existed. Most terrifyingly for the defenders, the humans began psychological warfare on a scale the galaxy had never witnessed. Captain Xiao. Bo Young-oh had been a communications specialist before joining the fleet, and she understood the power of information. Her ship began broadcasting across all Krek's frequencies, showing the aliens exactly what kind of planet had produced their enemies. Footage of Earth's most violent storms filled Krek screens. Hurricanes that leveled cities, tornadoes that could lift entire buildings, earthquakes that cracked continents in half. But the real shock came when the broadcast showed humans living normally through these disasters, treating planetary catastrophes as minor inconveniences. Then came videos of Earth's wildlife. Krek's viewers watched in horror as great white sharks hunted in packs, as polar bears survived in temperatures that would kill most aliens instantly, as tiny human children played safely near animals that could tear apart a Krek's warrior. But the most terrifying broadcasts showed human history. Wars fought with chemical weapons, nuclear explosions that turned cities to glass, soldiers advancing through battlefields that looked like scenes from hell itself. And through it all, humans not just surviving but growing stronger. "This is your enemy," Admiral Lee's voice accompanied the final broadcast. "We are the children of a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We are the survivors of ice ages, asteroid impacts, and 10,000 wars. We are what evolution creates when it wants something that simply will not die." The broadcast ended with a simple message: "Surrender now. This is your only warning." On Krexdal, the fortress world that had never been conquered, panic spread through the military command. They had assembled the greatest fleet in their empire's history, over 400 warships supported by orbital platforms that could shatter moons. But for the first time, Krek's commanders looked at their overwhelming advantage and wondered if it would be enough. They were about to find out what happened when an unstoppable force met an immovable object, and the unstoppable force had learned its lessons on Earth. Admiral Sojin Lee's voice echoed through every human ship in the fleet. "Protocol 7 is now active. All restrictions on human warfare are removed. We tried diplomacy. They chose to break their word. Now they learn what the Deathworld taught us." The transformation was immediate. Human warships that had been holding defensive positions suddenly scattered in directions that made no sense to the watching Krek's fleet. Instead of forming traditional battle lines, they moved like a pack of wolves surrounding prey. Captain Xiong Huan, Kim commanded the stealth destroyer Inchan's Shadow, a ship built for missions that officially didn't exist. While the Kreks focused on the larger human vessels, his ship vanished into the darkness between planets. Target their sensor networks first, Kim ordered his weapons officer. Make them blind before we make them dead. The Kreks had placed detection, satellites throughout the system, creating a web of sensors that could track every movement. These satellites were protected by energy shields and considered safe from attack by any civilized species that fought with plasma weapons. But humans didn't fight with plasma. The first kinetic missile was invisible on Krek's sensors, just a chunk of dense metal accelerating to incredible speed. It hit the nearest satellite and turned it into an expanding cloud of debris. The second missile destroyed another satellite before the aliens even realized they were under attack. Within minutes, Captain Kim's ship had systematically eliminated the entire sensor network, using weapons that the Kreks couldn't detect until impact. War leader Vextar found himself commanding 30 powerful warships that were suddenly flying blind. "Where are they?" he screamed at his sensor operators. "Where are the human ships?" The answer came from above, below, and all sides at once as the real assault began. Su Min Han led Fury Squadron in the most impossible maneuver ever attempted in galactic warfare. Her 3 prototype ships jumped directly into the middle of the Kreks formation, appearing inside their defensive perimeter, where no sane pilot would ever try to go. "All fighters, remember your training," she called over the communication system. "These aliens have never seen atmospheric combat. Show them how we fight on Earth." The Fury Squadron dove toward the planet's surface, weaving between plasma bolts that lit up the sky like deadly fireworks. Behind them, 6 Kreks fighters gave chase, their sleek designs built for combat in the clean emptiness of space. But Su Min led them into the planet's atmosphere, where Earth-trained pilots had advantages no alien could match. The Kreks ships started shaking as they hit the thicker air. Their perfect aerodynamics, designed for vacuum combat, became liabilities in the swirling winds of an actual planet. Su Min's fighter danced through a thunderstorm that was raging over the northern continent, using lightning strikes and wind shears as weapons. One Krek ship tried to follow her through a tornado and was torn apart by forces it couldn't predict or control. "This is impossible," the surviving alien pilots radioed to their command ship. "They're flying through weather that should destroy them." War leader Vextar listened to his pilots' confused reports and felt the first touch of real fear. These humans were fighting in ways that violated every rule of civilized warfare. They used their environment as a weapon, treated impossible conditions as normal, and seemed to think of combat as a creative art form rather than a formal contest. Meanwhile, in orbit above the planet, the main battle was showing the Kreks Empire what human space warfare really looked like. Captain Ji-won Yoon's assault carrier, Busan's Fury, released its full complement of marine boarding craft. Small, fast ships designed for one purpose, getting human soldiers onto enemy vessels. The Kreks had never seen anything like them because no civilized species tried to capture enemy ships during battle. "Boarding parties away," Captain Yoon announced calmly. "Show them what Marines do best." The boarding craft moved like angry insects, too small and fast for the Kreks' heavy weapons to track effectively. They attached themselves to enemy hulls and began cutting through armor with tools that sent sparks and metal fragments flying in all directions. Aboard the Kreks command ship, war leader Vextar watched in horror as human soldiers poured through holes in his vessel's hull. They wore full environmental suits and carried weapons that fired physical projectiles, filling his corridors with smoke and fire. "Repel boarders," he ordered, but his crew was paralyzed with confusion. How did you fight enemies who breathed poisonous gas, thrived in zero-gravity environments, and treated a heavily armored starship like a building to be conquered room by room? The humans moved through the ship like they had been born for this kind of fighting. They used magnetic boots to walk on walls and ceilings, fired around corners using mirror attachments on their weapons, and communicated with hand signals that were invisible to alien surveillance. Major Dong Hyun Lee led the assault through the Kreks command ship's central corridor. He was a veteran of urban warfare on Earth, where soldiers learned to fight in sewers, skyscrapers, and subway tunnels. A spaceship was just another building to him, with different doors and hallways. "Remember, take prisoners if possible," he called to his squad. "We need information about their fleet capabilities." The Krex defenders were brave but completely unprepared for human tactics. They expected direct attacks, honor duels, and predictable movements. Instead, they faced soldiers who appeared from ventilation shafts, attacked through floor panels, and used the ship's own systems against its crew. One group of Marines discovered the vessel's artificial gravity controls and began turning sections of the ship into zero-gravity zones, giving themselves an advantage over aliens who had never learned to fight while floating. Another team found the atmospheric controls and started introducing Earth-normal air into Krex sections, forcing the aliens to retreat or suffocate. Back on the planet's surface, Dr. Yoon-jung Seo worked frantically in the medical bay of the Souls, vengeance as the first wounded Vellani refugees were brought aboard human ships. The aliens were beautiful creatures, tall and graceful with skin that shimmered like pearls and eyes like liquid gold, but they were also terrified, having lived through 3 days of orbital bombardment. Many had never seen aliens before, let alone the legendary Deathworld dwellers they had called for help. "Please don't be afraid," Dr. Seo said through her translator as she treated a young Vellani's burns. "You're safe now." The alien looked up at her with wonder. You actually came. The old records said humans were real, but we hoped, but we never truly believed." Dr. Seo smiled as she applied healing gel to the creature's injuries. Humans keep their promises, especially to friends. More Vellani were arriving every minute, rescued from the planet's surface by human dropships that flew through plasma fire like it was a gentle rain. The aliens marveled at human medical technology, but they were even more amazed by human determination. These Deathworld dwellers had traveled across the galaxy to fight for strangers, asking nothing in return except the chance to do what was right. The tide of battle was turning rapidly. Half the Krex fleet was crippled or captured, their crews either taken prisoner or fleeing in escape pods. War leader Vextar's command ship was under human control, its corridors filled with alien warriors who had surrendered to soldiers they couldn't understand or defeat. For the first time in Krex history, their fleet was retreating from a smaller enemy force. "All ships withdraw to the outer system," Vextar ordered from his backup command vessel. "We will regroup and call for reinforcements." But Admiral Lee wasn't finished with them yet. Her voice cut across all communication frequencies, speaking directly to the fleeing Krex fleet. "War leader Vextar, you have a choice. Surrender now and we will treat you according to the Galactic Accords for prisoners of war. Continue fighting, and we will treat you according to Earth's rules for dealing with bullies." The alien commander's response was predictably defiant. "The Krex Empire does not surrender to herbivores. We will return with 1,000 ships and burn your Deathworld to ash." Admiral Lee's smile was visible to everyone on her bridge. Wrong answer. She opened communication to the entire human fleet. "All ships pursue and engage. Show them what happens when you threaten Earth." The human vessels accelerated after the retreating Krex, moving with a coordination and ferocity that shocked the galaxy. These weren't just warships. They were extensions of a species that had learned warfare from surviving on the most dangerous planet in known space. The Krex Empire had ruled through fear for 1,000 years. But now, they were running from something that scared them more than they had ever scared anyone else. They were being hunted by humans. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Vellani system, and what they saw made their hearts sink. 30 massive Krex warships surrounded the beautiful blue-green planet like vultures around a dying animal. Streams of plasma, fire rained down from orbit, turning the surface cities into glowing craters. Admiral Sojin Lee stood on the bridge of the Soul's Vengeance, watching the destruction through the main view screen. The Vellani world had once been covered in crystal, spires and floating gardens, but now smoke clouds hid most of the continents. "Communication incoming from the planet," reported the signals officer. "It's very weak." Dr. Yuna Kim hurried to her translation station as the message played. The voice was the same one they had heard in the original distress call, but now it was broken with exhaustion and despair. Human ships, is that really you? We thought, we hoped, but so many have died. The Kreks came 3 days ago. They're burning our libraries, destroying our cities. We have perhaps hours left. Admiral, Lee's jaw tightened. They had traveled across the galaxy to help these people only to arrive almost too late. But almost wasn't the same as too late. Signal the Kreks fleet, she ordered. Tell them we want to talk. Ambassador Kyung-Ho Lim, despite being aboard a warship heading into battle, still wore his diplomatic uniform. He activated the communication system and spoke in the formal manner he had learned from decades of negotiations. This is Ambassador Lim of the Human Defense Fleet, representing Earth and its colonies. You are attacking a peaceful species that has requested our protection. We demand that you stop your assault immediately and withdraw from this system. The response came quickly, filled with harsh clicking sounds and growling noises. Dr. Yuna's translation program worked frantically to convert the alien speech into human language. Soft ones from the imaginary Deathworld, the voice sneered. I am war leader Vexitar of the Kreks Third Fleet. We have claimed this world and its resources. Leave now, or we will add your ships to the burning debris around this planet. Ambassador. Lim remained calm despite the insult. The Villani are under human protection now. Your war is with us. But we are reasonable beings. Perhaps we can settle this without further bloodshed. Reasonable? The alien voice carried what sounded like laughter. You herbivores think you can threaten the Kreks? Very well. We will give you a chance to prove your strength. Single combat between champions. If your warrior wins, we will consider leaving this system. If our champion wins, your fleet surrenders and we will eat your crews. Admiral Lee looked at Ambassador Lim, who nodded slightly. This was a common practice in galactic warfare, ritual combat to avoid larger battles. But the Admiral had studied the Kreks military records during the journey to the system. We accept your challenge, Lim replied. But with human terms, no energy weapons, no plasma swords, no personal shields. Combat takes place on the planet's surface in natural terrain. There was a pause before war leader Vexitar responded. Agreed. Your champion fights with primitive weapons like a true Deathworld barbarian. This will be entertaining. We will meet on the largest continent, near the burning city of Velthera. As the communication ended, Admiral Lee turned to her staff. They agreed too quickly. They're planning to cheat. General Tae-Young Choi's image appeared on the communication screen from his ship. Of course they are. Bullies always cheat when they think no one is watching. Who do we send? Asked Captain Dae-Ho Park. Lieutenant Min-Ho Jung, the Admiral replied without hesitation. He's our best special operations soldier, and more importantly, he understands that sometimes the best way to win a fair fight is to make it unfair for the other guy. Lieutenant Young received his orders in the drop pod bay of the assault carrier. He was a quiet man with patient eyes and hands that never stopped moving, always checking his equipment. His weapons were simple compared to the advanced technology. Around him, a kinetic rifle that fired metal bullets, explosive charges that created fire and smoke, and various tools that would be familiar to any human soldier, but completely foreign to aliens. Remember, Commander Wu Jin Nam told him, they're expecting honorable combat between warriors. They have no idea what human warfare actually looks like. Young nodded as he sealed his armor. Earth didn't teach us to fight fair. Earth taught us to win. The drop pod launched toward the planet's surface while both fleets watched. The Villani had cleared a large area near their ruined capital city, creating an arena surrounded by crystalline pillars that would broadcast the combat across the system. The Kreks champion was already waiting when Jung's pod crashed into the ground. The alien was enormous, 3 meters tall with 4 arms and skin like black metal. Its natural claws were longer than human fingers, and its teeth could bite through steel. Around its waist hung weapons that hummed with energy. But Jung barely looked at the creature. Instead, he studied the terrain, the wind direction, the position of the sun, and the scattered debris from the destroyed city. In 30 seconds, he had found 17 ways to kill his opponent. The Krex champion spoke in its harsh language, probably issuing a formal challenge or boasting about its strength. Jung didn't bother with translation. He had work to do. The Bayou combat began when war leader Vextar's voice echoed across the arena. Fight! The Krex champion charged forward with impressive speed, expecting its opponent to meet it head-on in glorious battle. Instead, Jung rolled to the side, came up behind a pile of rubble, and vanished. For 10 seconds, the alien warrior looked around in confusion. Where was the human? This wasn't how combat was supposed to work. Champions faced each other directly, tested their strength and skill in obvious ways. Jung's first shot came from a position the Krex hadn't even considered. From underground, through a drainage tunnel that ran beneath the arena. The kinetic round punched through the alien's leg, armor like it was made of paper. The creature roared in pain and surprise, spinning to face the direction of the shot. But Jung was already moving, using techniques learned from hunting Earth's most dangerous predators in terrain that could kill you just for being careless. The second shot came from above, from a ruined building the alien had dismissed as empty. This bullet found a gap in the chest armor and sent the Krex champion stumbling backward, green blood streaming from the wound. Now the creature was angry. It began firing its energy weapons wildly, turning the arena into a light show of plasma, bolts and laser beams. The shots melted stone and metal wherever they hit, but they hit nothing but empty air. Jung had learned patience from hunting tigers in the Siberian forests and crocodiles in the Amazon swamps. He waited until the alien's weapons overheated and needed to recharge. That was when he struck. The explosive charge had been placed 30 minutes earlier, hidden in the rubble before the combat even began. When Jung triggered it, the blast sent the Krex champion flying through the air to crash among the crystal pillars. The alien tried to stand, but its left leg wouldn't support its weight. One arm hung useless at its side. Green blood covered its black skin, and its eyes showed something Krex warriors rarely experienced: fear. Jung emerged from concealment, his rifle ready. He could have ended the fight then with a clean shot to the head. Instead, he walked closer and spoke in careful, slow words that his translator would convert clearly. Your leader said you would eat my crew if you won. What happens if I win? The Krex champion snarled something in reply, but Jung could see the defeat in its posture. This creature had expected a glorious battle between warriors. Instead, it had been systematically hunted by someone who treated combat like a science. Tell your war leader, Jung continued. That was just one human, fighting alone, using simple weapons. We have 15,000 more where I came from. He raised his rifle and fired the final shot. The arena fell silent except for the crackling of fires in the distance. Across the system, both fleets had watched the entire battle. The Villani observers whispered among themselves in amazement. The humans had found a champion who fought like their ancient legends described, invisible, unstoppable, and absolutely without mercy. But it was the Krex fleet's reaction that mattered most. War leader Vextar's voice came over the communication system, and for the first time it carried uncertainty. This was not honorable combat. Your champion used tricks, deception, weapons of cowardice. Admiral Lee responded personally. That was human combat. Your champion is dead. Honor the terms of your challenge and withdraw from this system. Never. Vextar's voice rose to a shriek. All ships, target the human landing site. Destroy the area. Kill the human champion. 30 Krex warships turned their weapons toward the planet's surface. Plasma cannons that could melt mountains charged with deadly energy. The war leader had broken his own challenge terms, but he didn't care. These humans had humiliated the Krex Empire, and that could not be tolerated. Admiral Lee watched the enemy ships prepare to fire and smiled coldly. They just made this personal. She opened communication to the entire human fleet. All ships, you are now authorized for Protocol 7. Deathworld rules are in effect. Show them what happens when you make humans angry. The peaceful times were over. The real battle was about to begin. The briefing room aboard the Soul's Vengeance was packed with officers from across the battle group. Commander Wu Jin Nam stood at the front, pointing to a holographic display showing the alien ship designs they had intercepted from Krex communications. These are the enemy vessels, he explained to the assembled captains and marines. Notice how they're built. Smooth curves, energy shields covering everything, and all their weapons are plasma-based. Captain Jiwon Yoon from the assault carrier, Busan's Fury, raised her hand. What's the tactical advantage of that design? Beautiful and efficient, Nam replied. No sharp edges to catch enemy fire, energy shields that stop most attacks, and plasma weapons that can cut through almost any armor. The Kreks have been winning wars with this setup for hundreds of years. Dr. Hyojin Ko, the fleet's expert on alien biology, stepped forward. But there's something important you need to understand about their psychology. The Kreks are predators. Yes, but they evolved on a garden world just like most galactic species. She changed the display to show peaceful planets covered in gentle forests and calm seas. Look at these worlds. No storms, no earthquakes, no dangerous animals. The weather is always perfect. Food grows everywhere. The biggest challenge most aliens face is deciding what to have for lunch. Laughter rippled through the room, but Dr. Ko's expression remained serious. This isn't a joke. When your whole species grows up in paradise, your mind works differently. You follow patterns. You do things the way they've always been done. Even the Kreks, who conquer other worlds, still think like garden worlders. Commander. Nam nodded. They fight wars like sports games. Set rules, predictable tactics, honor codes. They've never met anyone who thinks outside their box. General Tae-young Choi's voice came through the communication system from his ship. What they don't know is that humans don't have a box. The display changed again, this time showing Earth. Dark storms swirled over the oceans. Volcanoes erupted on every continent. The ice caps gleamed white and deadly at the poles. This is what made us, Dr. Ko said quietly. A planet that tried to kill us every single day. Hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, droughts, ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanoes. And that was before we had to deal with bears, sharks, poisonous snakes, disease, and each other. She paused, letting that sink in. Humans don't follow patterns, because patterns get you killed on Earth. We adapt, we change, we find new ways to survive because the old ways stop working. Captain Yoon leaned forward. So what's our battle plan? Commander Nam smiled. We're going to break every rule they know. He activated a new display showing the human weapons being loaded onto the ships. Unlike the smooth alien designs, human equipment looked rough and dangerous. Sharp edges everywhere, exposed mechanical parts and warning labels in multiple languages. Forget energy shields, Nam continued. They stop plasma and lasers, but they don't stop big chunks of metal moving really fast. Our kinetic penetrators will go right through their defenses like they aren't even there. He pointed to images of missile systems. Chemical explosives. The aliens have never seen anything like them. Most species use pure energy weapons that burn clean. Our explosives make fire and smoke and flying pieces of metal. It's messy, it's unpredictable, and it will terrify them. Dr. Hyojin Ko added more information. Galactic species also have predictable sleep cycles. They rest when their star goes down, just like on their peaceful homeworlds. Humans learned to fight at night because Earth's predators hunted in the darkness. Night vision equipment, thermal imaging, all-weather gear, Nam listed. We can fight, in conditions that would make most aliens curl up and wait for morning. The real surprise came when Captain Sumin Han entered the briefing room. She was young for a pilot, barely 25, but her eyes held the steady confidence of someone who had stared down death and won. Tell them about the Fury Squadron, Commander Nam said. Sumin activated a classified display showing 3 prototype ships. They were smaller than traditional fighters but packed with advanced technology. These are the first ships equipped with Fury drive systems. We can appear anywhere on a battlefield in seconds. How is that possible? Asked Captain Yoon. Controlled micro-jumps through hyperspace, Sumin explained. The aliens use hyperspace for traveling between star systems, but they never thought to use it during combat. Too dangerous, they say. Too unpredictable. She grinned. Perfect for humans, in other words. The briefing continued for hours as they planned their approach to the Villani system. The Kreks would expect them to fight honorably, ship to ship, following the established rules of galactic warfare. Instead, the humans would arrive like a storm. Lieutenant Min Ho-jung, recently transferred from Earth's Special Forces, studied the enemy fortifications. These Kreks defend their positions like medieval castles. Big walls, obvious weak points, guards who patrol in regular patterns. What would you do differently? Nam asked. Everything, Jung replied. On Earth, if you build a fort, your enemies will find 17 ways to get inside it that you never thought of. They'll tunnel under it, climb over it, swim through the sewers, or dress up like pizza delivery guys. More laughter from the assembled officers, but they were beginning to understand the advantage they possessed. The Kreks were powerful, but they thought in straight lines. Humans had learned to think in spirals, loops, and sometimes upside down. Dr. Yuna Kim had been quiet during the briefing, working on her translator systems. Finally, she spoke up. I've been analyzing more Kreks communications. They keep calling us the soft ones and garden worlders pretending to be warriors. What's their opinion of Earth? Commander Nam asked. Yuna looked troubled. They think our planet is a myth. No world could be that hostile and still produce intelligent life. They believe we're lying about our origins to frighten them. Well, said Captain Yoon, they're about to learn the truth. The ships were nearly loaded now. Human Marines practiced combat drills using equipment that would be completely foreign to galactic warfare. Camouflage clothing that changed colors. Weapons that fired physical bullets instead of energy beams. Communications gear that worked underwater, underground, and in the middle of electromagnetic storms. Most importantly, they carried human attitudes. Where aliens saw impossible challenges, humans saw interesting puzzles. Where others accepted defeat, humans looked for unconventional solutions. Admiral Sojin Lee toured the Marine barracks personally, speaking with soldiers who would soon face unknown enemies on alien worlds. These men and women had trained for combat on Earth, the harshest training ground in the galaxy. Remember, she told them, we're not fighting to conquer, we're fighting to protect. The Villani called for help, and humanity answered. Make sure we're worthy of their trust. The final preparations were complete. 15 human warships hung in space near Jupiter, loaded with weapons and tactics that would surprise the galaxy. The crews were ready for anything because they had learned to be ready on a world where anything happened every day. Commander Nam made one last announcement to the fleet. The Kreks Empire has destroyed 17 civilizations using the same methods every time. They show up with overwhelming force against species that fight by the rules. He paused, looking around at faces that showed determination instead of fear. But they've never fought anyone from Earth before. They've never met a species that learned warfare from surviving hurricanes, ice ages, and dinosaurs. They think they're hunting sheep. His smile was not pleasant. They're about to discover they've cornered a pack of wolves. The stars looked peaceful from the observation deck of the research ship Harmony's Light. Dr. Yuna Kim pressed her face against the cool glass and watched the distant suns twinkle in the darkness. She had been studying alien languages for 10 years, but space still amazed her every day. A sharp beep from her computer broke the quiet moment. Yuna hurried back to her workstation where dozens of screens showed wave patterns and strange symbols. The ship's communication array had picked up something unusual. What do we have here? She whispered to herself, pulling up the signal analysis. The transmission was weak and broken, like someone shouting through a storm. But it was definitely artificial. Someone was trying to communicate. Yuna worked for 3 hours, running the signal through every translation program she had. Most alien languages followed similar patterns, but this one was different. The grammar was backwards, and the speakers seemed terrified. Finally, a word came through clearly. Help. Her heart started beating faster. Yuna increased the computer's OCAR power and focused all her equipment on the weak signal. Slowly, more words became clear. Please, anyone. The Kreks are coming. Our world is dying. We need the Deathworld dwellers. Yuna sat back in her chair, shocked. Deathworld dwellers? That was what some aliens called humans. Most species in the galaxy came from gentle planets with perfect weather and no dangerous animals. Earth was known as a death world because of its harsh storms, deadly creatures, and constant dangers. She recorded everything and sent it directly to Captain Daeho Park on Luna Command, the military base on Earth's moon. Captain Park was reviewing supply reports when Yuna's message arrived. He was a calm man who rarely showed emotion, but his eyes widened as he listened to the alien transmission. The voice in the recording was high and musical, clearly not human. The creature spoke about its people, called the Vallani, who lived on a planet of gardens and crystal cities. But now the Krex Empire was attacking them. The Krex eat entire worlds, the voice said through crackling static. They have ships like metal mountains and weapons that burn away life itself. We have no armies, no soldiers. We are scholars and farmers and artists. But the old records speak of humans, the ones who survived the angry planet. Only the Deathworld dwellers can stand against the Krex. We offer everything we have. Our treasures, our knowledge of healing, our crystal technology. Please, if you can hear this, help us. Captain Park immediately contacted Admiral Sojin Lee at Earth Defense Command. Within an hour, the War Council was meeting in the secure chambers deep under the Pacific Ocean. Admiral Lee was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had fought in Earth's last civil war and understood the cost of battle. General Tae Young, Choi sat across from her, a giant man with scars covering his hands. Around the table were the leaders of humanity's military forces. "Show them the message," Admiral Lee ordered. The room fell silent as they listened to the desperate alien plea. When it finished, General Choi spoke first. "We have to help them," he said, his deep voice echoing in the chamber. "These Krex sound like bullies picking on the weak." Dr. Min-Soo Yang, the council's science advisor, looked worried. "We know almost nothing about galactic politics. What if we're walking into a trap? What if the Krex are actually the good guys?" Captain Park shook his head. Dr. Kim analyzed the transmission carefully. The fear in that voice was real. No one fakes that kind of terror. Admiral Lee studied the star maps on the wall. The Vallani system was 3 weeks away at maximum speed. "General Choi, what forces do we have ready for deep space deployment?" "Battle Group 7 is finishing exercises near Jupiter," Choi replied. 15 ships, including the dreadnought Soul's Vengeance. Full complement of Marines and fighter squadrons. "That's not very many ships to fight an empire," Dr. Yang pointed out. General Choi smiled grimly. "Maybe not, but they'll be human ships." The debate continued for hours. Some council members worried about the cost. Others feared that humanity wasn't ready for galactic warfare. But Admiral Lee kept thinking about the voice in the transmission, begging for help from strangers across the void. Finally, she stood up. "We're going to help them," she announced. "Not because they're offering payment, but because it's right. Humanity will not stand by while innocent people are slaughtered." The room erupted in discussion, but her decision was final. Orders went out immediately across the solar system. Battle Group 7 received new instructions. Prepare for combat operations in unknown space against unknown enemies. On the military station orbiting Mars, Commander Wu Jin Nam received the alert while training new recruits. He looked at the message twice, hardly believing it. Humanity's first interstellar war was about to begin. News spread quickly through the inner colonies. Earth's media called it the greatest adventure, while military families worried about their loved ones heading into the unknown. But there was also excitement. For 50 years, humans had wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew they weren't, and someone needed their help. Dr. Yuna Kim packed her equipment and transferred to the Soul's Vengeance. As the ship's linguist, she would need to communicate with the Vallani when they arrived, if they arrived in time. The last message from the Vallani had been 3 days ago. It was much weaker than the first, and the background noise suggested explosions. The aliens were running out of time. Admiral Lee stood on the bridge of the Soul's Vengeance as the battle group formed up near Jupiter's red spot. 15 human warships hung in space like dark sharks, their weapons powered down but ready. Each ship carried the hopes of an entire planet. "All ships report ready for jump, Admiral," Captain Park announced from the navigation station. Lee looked out at the stars one more time. Somewhere out there, a peaceful species was fighting for its life against monsters. But they had called for help from the Deathworld dwellers, the ones who survived on the angry planet. They were about to learn what that really meant. "Jump," Admiral Lee ordered. The battle group disappeared into hyperspace, carrying humanity toward its first galactic war. Behind them, Earth continued spinning in the void, its surface covered with storms and earthquakes and deadly creatures. The planet that had forged the human species through millions of years of struggle and survival. Now those skills would be tested among the stars. The Villani had asked for the Deathworld dwellers to save them. They had no idea what they had just summoned. In the depths of space, the human fleet raced toward an unknown enemy, carrying weapons and tactics that the galaxy had never seen. The peaceful times were ending. The age of human expansion was about to begin with an act of heroism that would echo across 1,000 worlds, and somewhere in the dark between stars, the Krex Empire was about to meet something they had never encountered before, a species that treated impossible odds as just another Tuesday.